everybody, Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. We're going to cover everything. We're going to cut through all the propaganda, give it to you straight from left, right, and center. The opinions are what counts. Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and happy weekend. Boy, what a week it was this past week. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine the Democrats would be doing what they did, but they did. So, with that said, let me bring in a very special guest, someone who I met down in the great state of Florida. Angie Wong, welcome to Schaftlein Report. Happy to have you as we cover some topics today.
Thank you, Mark, for having me on your show.
Hey, listen, Angie, it's my pleasure. And folks, I had the pleasure of meeting Angie at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago earlier this year. I believe it was a Kerry Lake fundraiser. So we've got some great insight for you today. Angie, before we get started, tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about your background and what you're currently doing in Miami, and then we'll get right to the topic of the Democratic Death March, as you called it.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, no, I've been a journalist for over 20 years now. I just counted the years. I just came back from my 20-year anniversary reunion at my J school, and I've been a foreign correspondent. I've been assistant editor, and now I have a little radio show in Washington D.C. called The Final Countdown, and it's been great. It's been just amazing to be a reporter, especially during this election cycle. I've never seen anything this crazy in my entire lifetime, and we get to report on it. We are on the ground, we're reporting on it, we're watching day-to-day moments. I was just saying to my colleague the other day that, it was July 11th. Right. And that was the day that Donald Trump was supposed to be sentenced by a Manhattan judge. Remember that? And here we are, talking about Joe Biden being in hot waters, about to be moved off the presidential ballot. I mean, talk about karma, right? It is just the most crazy election year I've ever covered.
It's really interesting. The name of your radio program, The Final Countdown, that's really a pretty good description about what we had happen this past week. And folks, I'm not making this up. It really is. He survived that press conference, Angie. And I don't think there's any better word to use than survive it. And yet, doubts linger. What are your sources telling you? What are your listeners telling you? I mean, this has been a tumultuous week. I've got some thoughts, but you go first.
Yeah, well, we were expecting 3 strikes and Joe's out, right? He had a terrible, disastrous debate, if you can even call it that, performance. Then he had the ABC George Stephanopoulos interview, which also bombed. And, all eyes were on Joe and whether or not he can breathe and stand up and chew gum at the same time yesterday during the NATO summit press conference where he was alone on stage and apparently unscripted, right? And he survived it, but barely. I think he bought himself a few more days, but ultimately that's all he needed was a few more days because guess what? Come this weekend, it's the RNC convention. So all the media air is going to be focused on the convention and Donald Trump, who his VP pick is going to be. And who's not going to be in the news? Joe Biden. So he gets to breathe for another week. But we'll see. The wolves are out.
It's really amazing. I watched that press conference and I noticed quite, a few things. Look, you had the obvious things that the national media was talking about, the Putin-Zelensky issue, calling Trump vice president when he met to talk about Kamala Harris. But I mean, really, when you got down to the substance of it, Angie, I was really disappointed. I mean, the guy is creepy at the microphone. I mean, he's been this way for a long time. And when he does that, hey, I got to tell you, folks, this whispering routine that he's done over the years, it doesn't make him really look well. Some of the answers to some of the questions, he would just rumble on and on and on. And some of his comments, he would throw zingers in there like, well, we're going to cap rents at 5%. Where'd that thing come from? Stupid stuff like, last week I created 2,000 jobs. What are you talking about? Yeah,
I know.
I'm sitting there literally writing notes, scratching my head, going, what the hell is this guy talking about? And then he would, sure, right on cue, he would he had this hand select group of people who he was going to call on. And I know you as a journalist, that's got to be infuriating when you're,
It was.
I mean, it really was bad. I mean, he looked like he was sort of not totally in control and waving that list around like he was doing. I'm like, why?
Who is this guy?
Yeah, Angie, does that make him look worse or does that make him look presidential? Because the left wing media, right on cue, oh, that's the statesman we knew. He's Mr. Foreign Policy, blah, blah, blah.
Right, right. Well, you got to remember the press was very, very soft on him yesterday, and he chose member of the press corps that would be soft and accommodating to his geriatric behaviors. Remember, guys, this is the best Joe Biden will ever look or be. Okay? This was after weeks of having to revamp him, changing his makeup, changing his hair, changing the way he smiles, and he still reverts to creepy grandpa, right? In the very beginning, he read a 4 or 5 minute speech from the teleprompters. He looked presidential. He thought, okay, I got it. I got away with it. But then slowly, as we watched the presser unfold, he was losing it. He was slipping, he was getting tired, and then it went back to creepy grandpa. It went between the creepy whispers to shouting, and then you're like, what demon just entered the room here? And all of the press is covering it. That's the problem. When he said mistakenly, Vice President Trump, instead of who he actually meant, his real vice president, his entire cabinet was sitting there. They didn't blink. They knew, they expected this. That's how scary it was. We're there, everyone's an enabler of all of this. And you know what? You and I, we have eyes, so do Americans. We all see it. So even though he might have gotten through an hour's press conference yesterday, he didn't really, because what's come out today? Well, his biggest super PAC today, just an hour ago, said they're going to withhold $90 million donations going to Joe Biden until Joe Biden removes himself. So he is definitely on the death watch list. It's going to happen, I'm guessing, before Wednesday.
And why do you say before Wednesday, Angie? What's the critical date Wednesday?
Well, Wednesday is going to be the day Donald Trump announces his vice president pick at the
Right.
Milwaukee convention. And if I were them, if I were their media advisor, I would be scheduling Joe Biden's fall around the same time to steal all the media air from Donald Trump, because that's how politics works. So I imagine what one report that I read, actually several reports prior to coming on your show today, was that there is a 48-hour coalition to move Joe Biden off the ticket. And you know what? Jill Biden's, she's still, whether or not she's a doctor or not, she's smart. And, so are the people around Joe Biden. They know they're out. It's just, what deal can I get for myself to get out? And I think that's what the negotiating that's happening. Donors already said, I am going to keep my 90 million. Thank you very much. George Clooney came out and said, no, you got to go, in a New York Times op-ed. He got Hollywood. You have Chuck Schumer and Barack Obama saying, no, Joe, it's too late. So those are the fractures of the DNC. I don't see Joe Biden surviving this another week.
Let me give you a counterpoint here, because I initially thought that, but the more I'm sort of reading the body language, Hakeem Jeffries met with him yesterday.
That's right.
Jeffries did not give a full-throated endorsement like Jim Clyburn has. Okay, so obviously from press reports, it looked like he's relaying the concerns of the caucus to President Biden. But in that news conference, and I'm going to make sure I get the right quote, he says, I'm just going to keep moving when asked about him being in the race or not. And when you take, again, we're not medical doctors, but when you take an appearance of dementia, even people with dementia can have some good days. But I think you just said the key point. It's never going to get better, and it is going to decline. But if you combine potentially having dementia coupled with that legendary stubbornness in Joe Biden, And the fact that he knows that Barack Obama is literally trying to push him out, and he's not been happy about that ever since 2016. Angie, is there a chance he fights the Democrats and clings to this thing and just waits it out? And here's the counterpoint why I'm a little why I think he may do that. I saw some polling that came out on Friday. I was sort of shocked by it. There was that Washington Post poll that had him basically tied, and I saw another poll that had Joe Biden up 2 points. Now that's not the norm. Trump was leading by anywhere from 2 to 3 points. Um, am I off base here? Is there any chance that he could decide just to fight this thing out? Because as you're well aware, right on cue, nothing in Washington happens by accident, Angie. More Democrats have announced they're leaving. I think the total now is up to 17 or 18, one Biden to go. Angie, you got about half a minute before break, but am I wrong here, or is it a foregone conclusion?
Look, nobody wants to be the first one to stab Julius Caesar, right? 17 of them have come out because they know if Joe Biden is on the ticket come November 5th, that all the down ballot races will also suffer, including their very own congressional reelection efforts. And that's not just for Congress, but state seats, governor's races, all the down ballot candidates will suffer because nobody's going to come out for Joe Biden. That's what the polls don't say currently. I love these polls. I buy polls all day long for my candidates. So I know that, it could be swayed.
Well, folks, we're going to take a quick break right now, but when we come back, we're going to dive into some of these polls and give you the real numbers about what's really going on in this race. See you in 90 seconds.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, my name is General Mike Flynn, and I'm here to talk about a limited time offer of subscriptions to Patriot.tv and how you can become a member of our Patriot Defenders subscription club and become a member of Patriot.tv. Really, it's America's network. I call it the home of truth. And you can do that for only $9.99 a month. It's a great deal by itself, but what I'm going to walk you through here in these next few seconds is a couple of package deals that we have that are unbelievable. The next membership was the annual membership at $99 that you can save. Right away, you save $20 if you come in at the annual subscription rate. The best deal that I think that people ought to seriously consider is the 2-year membership at $159. And it includes a special edition of my recently released documentary, Flynn, Deliver the Truth, Whatever the Cost. So along with the 2-year membership, the 2-year subscription will send you a DVD combo of the film, plus an option to stream the movie online, as well as exclusive interviews of Tucker Carlson, Devin Nunes, and myself. So go to the home of truth, right? Go to Patriot.tv today, sign up, seriously consider the 2-year subscription rate. It's an unbelievable savings. I think it's a total savings of about $70 from just signing up on a monthly or a annual basis. So thank you very much for your support. Patriot.tv is America's new network. Thank you.
Thank you, General Flynn, for leading this effort. And folks, go to that Patriot Defenders, click on it, and become a Patriot Defender yourself, because it's a great, great way to support Patriot.tv. Okay, Angie, when we took that break, we were talking about how some of these poll numbers going in Trump's way, he was leading 2 to 3 points. And as many people are aware, that was a swing of roughly 12 points from where this same date, same election time was back in 2020. Now, remarkably, post-debate, post-Stephanopoulos, post-conference, news conference, some of the polling has come out, which one poll showed Joe Biden up by 2 points among registered voters. Another showed the race tied. But in the polling piece, and a lot of both Democratic pollsters and Republican pollsters tell you this, average them out over a period of time and get as many as possible that are credible polls. And when you do that, Donald Trump is leading anywhere 2 to 3 points. That would translate into an electoral landslide. Angie, which poll numbers are correct here? Is Trump ahead by more than the polls are showing? The old people don't want to tell pollsters they're voting for Trump, but they really are. Or is this race still extremely tight?
I think this race is still extremely tight. And I don't think either candidate should take this as in any indication of a win. They have to work harder. I want to see Trump overwhelmingly win. He's got to have polls in the double digits in favor of him because we all know there's going to be anomalies. Can we say anomalies for the election? Right? I think that's a safe word. So, in order to overcome those anomalies, he's going to have to overwhelmingly win in the ballots, whether you're mailing in your ballot or voting on election day. It's got to be a big rush. It's got to be a huge win for him so that there's no questions, come November 6th. I'm not surprised that Biden upticked a little bit in numbers because guess what? We haven't seen him in 3 years. Right? So all of a sudden he's doing interviews on ABC, he's doing debates. Even if if you don't like his performance, at least you see him. So, hiding Biden ticked up 2 points. Great. Good on you, Joe. Big boy.
I've got a little bit different take on it. Their entire strategy is to win 3 states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. If they lose
Hmm.
any one of those 3 states, Donald Trump will be president. And I went back and I looked at some polling in those states. When you hear people like Michael Moore, a Michigander,
Hmm.
Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan,
Hmm.
um, Michigan, Trump appears to be up somewhere 2 to 3 points in Michigan.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, yeah. I mean, Biden's Middle East policy is not helping him there.
Nope.
Uh, I mean, this push for electric vehicles. I mean, you know,
Well,
not
let's
really the most
digest that.
popular, not really the most popular thing in Michigan. Um, the Republicans, no coincidence, having their convention in Wisconsin. That didn't happen by accident, folks. It's because Wisconsin is a swing state. It's very, very tight there. What, Angie, Biden won it last time by like 10, 11,000 votes, something like that.
Yeah,
Pen-
I
and
remember that being a really tight race. I don't know if it was just 11,000 votes, but it was tight, and certainly the GOP needs to grab that state if it can. Remember, it was just about a week or two when the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled that drop boxes are allowed, despite a referendum by the people saying they didn't want it. So
yeah.
we're going to have drop boxes everywhere. Will there be cameras there? What's the chain of custody on those votes? So I'm
Excuse
worried
me.
about Wisconsin. Michigan, I think Michigan should be the in play state of all states because of the Arab American vote there and the Muslim
Mhm.
American vote there. I think that's going to be very important. Joe Biden cannot win the message on Gaza at all. Okay. He could be sending $300 million peers there that never worked, that collapsed on day one. But still, you can't trick me into thinking that you're even helping the people in Gaza. And he's not even hiding the fact. In fact, he's hiding, from who? Is Bibi Netanyahu. That's who he's hiding from when Bibi makes an appearance at the joint session of Congress later this month. Michigan, he's trying to win it with the union vote. That's why he was hard on the union message yesterday during the press conference. I'm like, you're here to talk about NATO? Why are you talking about unions, right? But he was given a talking point through his earpiece, gotta say. And Pennsylvania, if he doesn't win his hometown, that's super embarrassing. But Pennsylvania, I think the Trump world has to let that one go. You can spend money there, I get it, but it's really just to uptake the numbers and to make the DNC spend money in a state where I think they feel like they may have it locked. Um, I've run
Well,
races in Pennsylvania before. It's tough. It's very
it
tough.
is it is tough, but Trump in Pennsylvania, his polling numbers are, Angie, are higher. He has a wider lead in Pennsylvania. I think it's three to
Yeah,
four points than he does in
for
Michigan
now.
or Wisconsin. So I would actually take the other side of that trade, and and I think Trump's doing something really smart. he is campaigning in areas that Republicans traditionally do not campaign in. I mean, he goes to the belly of the beast into Philadelphia. What did he do? He drew a great crowd. Joe Biden
Yeah,
doesn't
he
draw
did.
crowds like that. So, and Trump did win Pennsylvania in 2016. He lost it in 2020. But if I got a sense, Angie, that they are going to play hard in Pennsylvania. They're going to play hard in all three of those states because the reality is they only got to win one. And if they win one of the three, then Donald Trump is going to be president. And
Yeah.
irony of ironies, Angie, some of the states after the debate debacle that we're talking about being in play, now I'm skeptical at times when I hear Trump +1 in New Jersey. New Jersey. Trump competitive in New Mexico. I'm saying New Mexico, New Jersey, those are blue states. Now, one state I do think he could be competitive in is Virginia. I saw a little bit of polling out of Virginia where he was only down a point or two. New Hampshire, similar situation, plus or minus a point or two. But then we got, as you correctly said, Biden he fell down, but he got a little bit of a bounce in some recent polls. Now, we're heading into the Republican convention. Traditionally, the nominee gets a little bit of a bump coming out of their convention. Angie, I'm not so certain that's going to be the case here because I think the sliver of voters that are, quote, undecided is so marginal at this point. Am I wrong? Or can Trump get a decent sized bump coming out of the convention?
Yeah, all those recent polls that you had just mentioned sounds exactly like divided party lines, right? People that will never, ever, ever vote for Trump, and people who can't, they're embarrassed by Biden, but where else are they going to go, right? So those just sound like that's where America is right now. That little sliver that you're talking about, it really does matter. And I'll tell you what else matters, the minority vote, because that's where I think you can pull a lot over, a lot of Democrats, a lot of, centrists, a lot of small business owners, parents who don't necessarily follow politics. They just don't like what they're seeing in their public schools or with their small businesses or the economy right now. So I think those are the crossover voters that Trump should be concentrating on. And I think you're absolutely right with Virginia. I think Virginia is the real state that's in play. Forget New York, forget Pennsylvania, forget even New Jersey with 1 point up. I've run so many races in those states. I'll tell you, Manhattan will keep it blue.
Right.
Hate to be a Debbie Downer, but it's hard. It is super hard. There's maybe a sliver of Chinatown that you could turn red. That's like 1 block long. That's about it, right? And I'm happy that Trump thinks New York, his hometown, and New Jersey can be in play. But that's really for the benefit of making the Democrats spend money where they never had to spend money before. I'm good with that. Let them spend money there. Let them allocate more there rather than Wisconsin or Michigan. But Virginia is a really interesting one because you and I both saw what happened with Bob Good there in the congressional race
Yep.
during the primaries, right? So it tested the Trump endorsement and his powers in Virginia. Remember, Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia,
Yep.
he's termed out after this, right? And then you have Winsome Sears, who definitely is eyeballing that seat. I think that's a really good strategic move to get Glenn Youngkin. Either give him the VP spot or give him a cabinet seat, something so he can deliver Virginia. So then Trump, it lessens the mode of having to win one of these key states. Because then what if you get all the little smaller states, right, with a smaller electoral college votes? Do that, and that already puts everything else in place. So I think that's what's happening here. I have to go back and do the math on this, but it really is data science. And I think Virginia would be a great one to win for Trump.
Well, if let's just play a scenario, I game it out here a little bit. I love the idea of him putting Glenn Youngkin on the ticket. I think Glenn Youngkin is an exceptional candidate, an exceptional person. Look what he did in basically taking Virginia, which was a bluish purple state, and
Yep.
he won election there, and he beat a sitting governor. So, and his policies, Virginia seemed to be, his approval ratings pretty high in the state. So
Mhm.
you can, Angie, you literally, with the Biden camp, focusing on Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Let's say a miracle happened and Biden won all three of those, but lost Virginia. Trump's president.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's right. That's the
if Trump
play.
holds serve, Trump holds serve and loses those three, but he picks up. Now that makes the assumption, Angie, that he's up by like 5 or 6 in Nevada. He's up 6 or 7 in Arizona, 6 to 8 in Georgia, cruising in North Carolina. I mean, those states, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, they're not even within the margin of error right now. So I think that's why the Biden campaign is so focused on the old traditional blue wall states. And Angie, I think that Virginia could be a play, but I also know this. These Democrats, Angie, and you alluded to it earlier, they are not going to take this lying down. I
No.
predict the following is going to happen. If
Tell me.
Biden if he survives the Republican convention, and this is no way to run a campaign. If you're a Democrat, it's going to infuriate you. But running a campaign based upon survival, it's almost like the old Hunger Games thing. I mean, how long can they tolerate that going on while Trump is going to come out of that convention in pretty good shape?
Yeah. There's a few things. I believe that they're waiting for Trump to choose his running mate on Wednesday before they make any moves on Joe Biden. Because if it's not Joe Biden, the natural successor will be Kamala Harris. And so if she becomes head of the ticket, who's her running mate going to be? And that's going to be completely reliant on who Trump picks as his VP, just as a counterpoint. And I like the ideas of playing with the states. I don't think Trump's entirely secure. He may feel secure, but I've seen this happen before, where in the summer before the election, you're like, yes, I got it in the bag, everything's good, and then the whole thing turns sideways, right? So he cannot relax, not right now.
All right, on that thought, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to get into why the Democrats are so pissed off about what's happened. Be back shortly.
Sounds rolling, all 3 cameras, we're good.
Is there any regrets that you have in life? I should sit here and say, yeah, I got a lot of regrets. But when I look back on my life and I understand the lives that were lost, I mean, I'm sitting here with you. And I can tell my story.
Former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
He was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
Brilliant military career, serving 33 years.
Why was he being so elusive?
Mike Flynn told the truth and faced life in prison.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn, one of America's most treasured military heroes. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Go to Patriot TV, click on Store, and grab a once-in-a-lifetime chance to own a treasured piece of American history. And get your own personal download link to watch America's most talked-about movie, as well as a DVD hand-signed by General Michael Flynn. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store. Incredible savings and a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
And we're back. So, Angie, one thing that struck me over the past couple weeks since the debate debacle has a lot of Democrats really upset. And what are they upset about? Well, our side's called it a cover-up. Even their side is calling it a cover-up. And there's a lot of people really ticked off at what I'll call Joe Biden's handlers, the people that Angie controlled virtually everything this man did. I mean, from not allowing him to have press conferences, shielding him from questions. What this press conference this past couple days was first one he had in 8 months. The cue cards that they give him, I mean, Speaker Johnson and former Speaker McCarthy would talk about meetings they would have in the White House where they had these giant cards put up. And then there was the infamous pathway. Well, here's where you stand, here's where you walk. And then obviously things that came out in the past couple of weeks about feeding questions to African American reporters who were radio hosts that Biden went on their show. One of them ended up getting fired because of it. Angie, give me your thoughts on this, because that to me, it almost seems like they're really ticked off at something they controlled.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe Biden's just acting out his Hollywood script. Why is the left surprised at all that they saw Grandpa Joe up on stage during the debate? Tell me that was not coordinated with amongst the media. The minute, even before Joe Biden was shuffled off the stage by Jill Biden, the media went after him. It was the first time I was shocked, actually, for the after programs, because I've never seen like the David Axelrod, the Joy Reid from MSNBC. It looked like everyone was given permission to attack Joe. And I have to believe that they allowed Joe to do that very first presidential debate. And it was earlier than any other scheduled presidential debate so that the world can see and have an excuse to move him off the stage. Because the very next, no, not even the next day, within hours, the New York Times had an op-ed, Joe's got to go. Every single mass media had Joe has to go. This is Joe barely holding on by the fingernail. I think his team knows what's going on. I think every staffer at the White House right now is applying for other jobs. You're going to see mass resignations any point. They needed to just buy a little bit of time to get their situations sorted. Joe Biden, if he really cared about the country and he really cared about the Democratic Party, he would resign. He would leave. He would have to leave only because he can't even stay on another day. Not because we all know that he's got issues and he's got health issues, but if he stays on another day, then, people are going to say, well, hang on, you're not going to run again, but you think you're mentally fit enough to run the country still? So that's the problem they're facing. How do you mitigate all the harm that's been done? How does now the Democratic Party save itself? It needs new blood. It needs a superstar. I was even joking today on Twitter that maybe George Clooney wants that gig, right? Why is he like, all of a sudden it's like all about George Clooney? Well, imagine, just for a second, George Clooney being on a ticket. People would come out for that, right? Because Michelle Obama has already said she didn't want it.
Right. Well, I'm gonna agree with you on something here. Nothing in Washington happens by accident. You've been around that town a long time, Angie. I mean, think about what you just said. Was this literally a political hit on the president? It sure seems like it, because how in the world they sit up there at Camp David for a week? And yeah, they stuffed him with facts, figures, and there was no way, the wording out of Camp David was, well, he wasn't feeling good, jet lag. This didn't happen by accident, Angie. I mean, this goes to like a point that you're making. Who's really calling the shots in that Biden White House? Or is it Anita Dunn? Is it Susan Rice? Is it some of his other lesser known advisors? Ron Klain, he's not there anymore. Ron Klain's a pretty talented guy. Ted Kaufman. I mean, Angie, who is really running the show in the White House? And that's a big thing that's in question. And I think that's, for the Democrats that weren't in on the gig, I think that's what's got them most ticked off right now.
Right. We can make a guess at who were the collaborators and the enablers of all this. Ultimately, Joe Biden was chosen because he was a great puppet. Not great, but he was a puppet that they could control. When they saw that they can no longer control Joe Biden, whether it be Jill Biden, Hunter Biden, and those surrounding Joe Biden right now, they said, no, you got to go. Because the whole point of a Joe Biden presidency was that he could be controlled. He can be used. He is the front man for all of these things that have happened to the United States and the world. Look at all the world wars that we're in right now, okay? They were able to use him as a front man. After the debate, and maybe even before then, they knew they couldn't control Joe anymore. And that's when he was already gone. So now we're just seeing Act 3, where he is moved off the presidential stage. Whether willingly or not, they are going to move him out. And I really know this now because there's enough people and enough big power players within the DNC saying so. They were all given the permission to say it. It wasn't otherwise they would play the game, but they're not.
Yeah,
The new game is get him out.
yeah, do you think Hakeem Jeffries was going to allow 17, 18 Democrats to come out? And it's been like a slow drip, Angie. Right after Biden's conference, we had three more say they were not going to support him, including Jim Himes of Connecticut. Another one came out on Friday that got, I think, up to 18. One Vermont senator has said no. And like when we started the program, when you talked about the fact that the money people in the Democratic Party are starting to withhold it, and these are not small dollars, folks. Look, Biden made the comment in the presser, well, I got $220 million in the bank. That's true. He does. And they had been successfully raising money. But in a political campaign at that level, they go through a lot of dough. And folks, it's expensive. That's why these campaigns are over. Angie, do you ever think you'd see billion-dollar campaigns for president? I mean, that's really where we are right now.
They were expecting 2 to 3 billion for this race to get Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, right after the debate debacle, he committed 50 million in media ad buys for the month of July. So if he spent 50 million already, another 90 being removed from his campaign, he doesn't have enough to survive. And when the donors go, when Hollywood goes, when Chuck Schumer's at your door, Hakeem Jeffries saying, Joe, I'm going to lead you to your nursing home. I know that's not what he said to the congressional members, but he can't say anything publicly right now. Even Nancy Pelosi is hinting, yeah, it's up to Joe, which really tells me all that it's already a done deal. It's just getting Joe the best deal so that he will cooperate. Because ultimately, look at the actual logistics of moving Joe Biden off the ticket at this point. He's already won the primaries. He would need to give up his delegates willingly to the next candidate. Or, and here's the other fun fact, they're trying to move up the DNC nomination for Joe Biden on July 21st. That's 2 days after the RNC convention has commenced. Why? It's another reason it could be that Joe Biden has to actually get the nomination first before he can give it up. And this is like, gray zone territory. I'm not a historian. I'm not sure if it's ever happened this way before. But in order for Joe, right now, unless they get 50 states and the state GOP chairs, I think it's the state GOP chairs or the electoral chairs, to then have to rewrite the rules to give it to somebody else. Those are the only really two ways that I can think of where there could be another candidate that comes in. Even if it's Kamala Harris, he's going to have to willingly give his delegates to her. I believe under the current rules, she can accept the donation money. I'm not sure about that. It depends on the PACs, and it gets quite detailed there. And someone who is an election lawyer and CPA could probably better talk about it than I can. But yeah, it's going to be Kamala Harris that would be the easiest path. And can she be a puppet? I mean, that's really the only requirement to be president for the Democrats right now. Can this person be a puppet that we can use?
Well, you know what? I'm going to touch on what you just said there because you were talking about policies there. And all these Democrats are coming out and praising Joe Biden. I mean, I'm listening to all this garbage come out. Oh, the greatest president since Lyndon Johnson. I'm thinking, wait a second. They just bypassed over Barack Obama, who's like, Saint Obama in the Democratic caucus. And I'm sitting there saying, what great policies. Yeah, he passed some legislation, but we had, 10 million illegal immigrants cross our southern border. We had 9% inflation. Yes, it's come down to 3%, but prices for your average American are still very high. Young people can't afford to buy houses. We had the debacle in Afghanistan under his watch. We have 2 wars, one in the Middle East and one with Russia and Ukraine. Trump had basically had the Iranians down to minimal assets, and now the Biden administration has them flush again. I mean, I keep hearing about all this success, Angie, and I'm saying the issues that are important to most people are the economy, the border, and yet Democrats seem to be talking about only three things: abortion, bad orange man Donald Trump, and democracy's on the line. I mean, it's fear mongering, and that's what Democrats do well.
Yeah, they do it very, very well. So you and I are of reasonable mind. We have to put money out to put food on the table, take care of children, elderly, and others. So those are the things that we're thinking about. Democrats, they want free stuff. I mean, let's be real. They want free stuff. And they throw, where Joe Biden's policies have worked is, all of it is put through a lens of like whether it's DEI or racial lenses. So for that kind of measurement, yeah, it's worked. He's done a lot of policies that benefit a small fraction of people, but not the majority of Americans. So look at his schedule for the next couple of days. So he's still like, we're just talking about the Joe Biden election death watch. He's got to really get those coalitions back because we already see black men, they're going to Trump. Right? Not the black females, but mostly kind of middle-aged black men and younger are going to Trump. So he's losing in that realm. This weekend, he's meeting with the Asian Pacific American coalitions. He's meeting with all those guys going, you're still with me, right? But here's the problem. The blood is in the waters. So all of these coalitions, black, Latino, Asian, Jewish, whoever he's meeting with, they're all going to want something from him. He is going to have to negotiate and give up so much more than he had to as an incumbent now. And that is the real problem of the Democratic Party, because now they'll say, we'll support you, Joe, but we want $30 billion committed to our causes. Can you do that for us? I don't know if he can make those decisions just yet, but he's going to have to.
He's going to have to, is right, Angie. All right, we're going to take our final break, but when we come back, we're going to dive into Kamala Harris and who else could end up being on that ticket.
Oof.
Close it out shortly.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most private assets, silver and gold.
Call Kirk Elliott, PhD at 877-547-5743. That's 877-KIRK-PhD.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, my name is General Mike Flynn, and I'm here to talk about a limited time offer of subscriptions to Patriot.tv and how you can become a member of our Patriot Defenders subscription club and become a member of Patriot.tv. Really, it's America's network. I call it the home of truth. And you can do that for only $9.99 a month. It's a great deal by itself, but what I'm going to walk you through here in these next few seconds is a couple of package deals that we have that are unbelievable. The next membership was the annual membership at $99 that you can save. Right away, you save $20 if you come in at the annual subscription rate. The best deal that I think that people ought to seriously consider is the 2-year membership at $159. And it includes a special edition of my recently released documentary, Flynn, Deliver the Truth, Whatever the Cost. So along with the 2-year membership, the 2-year subscription will send you a DVD combo of the film, plus an option to stream the movie online, as well as exclusive interviews of Tucker Carlson, Devin Nunes, and myself. So go to the home of truth, right? Go to Patriot.tv today, sign up, seriously consider the 2-year subscription rate. It's an unbelievable savings. I think it's a total savings of about $70 from just signing up on a monthly or a annual basis. So thank you very much for your support. Patriot.tv is America's new network. Thank you.
And thank you, General Flynn, for your service to our country. There it is, folks. Patriot Defenders, come on out and support us. All right, Angie, we talked a lot about poll numbers, how we got in this situation. Now the acid question comes up. Okay, we're going to operate this segment on the assumption that either Biden voluntarily leaves because they paid him enough to go away, or he steadfastly will not leave and they're going to try to force him out. Now, this conventional wisdom, and I always get a little nervous about that when it comes to Democrats, has it that Kamala Harris, she's the anointed one. I'm not so certain of that. I mean, at this late in the game, could they possibly pass her over? Well, Jim Clyburn even had suggested this mini primary situation where we get 4 or 5 names. Now, I don't know how they're going to pick those 4 or 5 names. But Angie, what makes more sense for the Democratic Party, not us, what's in our best interest as a country, but for the Democratic Party, give it to Kamala or else pluck out 4 or 5 names. And I'm going to caveat the question with this, Angie. I'm not certain they can get 4 or 5 names, because if you're Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer and you're looking at these poll numbers, do you really want to put your future and the possible risk of losing to Donald Trump? I mean, if Newsom or Whitmer were out there on that ticket and they lost, they're finished.
Oh,
Tell me
you're
what you think.
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Gavin Newsom clearly is running for 2028. He's out there getting his name out. He's got a great brand ID for the Democrats. Kamala Harris, she's the natural choice. And guess what? She is a woman of color. The Democrats cannot get rid of a woman of color. And when I can say that with some definity, because when I saw Joy Reid get so giddy trying to get Joe Biden out of there, I thought to myself, well, why would she do that? I mean, I thought she was a Democrat, that she was touting the Democrat speaking points. It's because, oh, if Joe's gone, then you could have the first woman of color president in his place. So I think that's the motivation there. It would be very difficult to move Kamala Harris, because she was promised this. Remember Joe Biden when he was on the campaign trail? I'm the one-term president. I'm going to hand it over to my successor, Kamala Harris. I remember that. We could probably play that clip because it's on YouTube. And you know what? I think that 4 or 5 names, it would not survive. It's almost like it's flattery to put their names out, but they're not going to want it either, because guess what? They have weeks to run a presidential race. There's only a handful of people who can actually pull this off, and it's not going to be Kamala Harris. It's going to be Michelle Obama. It's going to be a superstar. You need superstars that on day one of the election, they can bring in all that money and all the votes and all the excitement and momentum that Joe Biden has never had, ever, not even when he was running for 2020. There was never momentum behind him. They have such a short window to actually get this launched. And you're right. I think your assessment is correct. Anyone who runs right now, it's a suicide mission, right? Because you're going to lose to Donald Trump. Who wants that? Maybe Joe Biden wants that. I don't know, but who would want that at this point?
Well, I think I think your point earlier about if it's not Biden, my gut feeling tells me if they force him out or if they pay him enough money to where he voluntarily steps aside and gives some gracious speech, I don't see how they're going to go anyone but Kamala Harris, because I think they're believing some of these polling numbers out there that showed she's within 2 points of Trump. I'm not buying that.
No.
I think Kamala Harris, when she ran for president, she got 0 delegates. She dropped out before the Iowa caucuses. I mean, that's hard to do. I mean, to literally get 0 delegates, and her primary job as vice president, according to the president, was to manage that border. It's been an unmitigated disaster. She's only been down there one time in the entire 3.5 years she's been vice president. Swapping her for Biden, if I'm Biden's team, and I'm sure they're going through this, you heard it over the past couple of days that the Biden campaign is actually polling Kamala Harris numbers to see who does better, her or him. And again, if you're stubborn Joe Biden, who clearly is going to be declining, you're not going to reverse that. And if their internal polling, Angie, shows that she's doing no better than he is, which is what I believe those poll numbers will show, then it's going to be hard to get him out. But operating under the assumption they're successful either paying him off or getting him to leave,
Yeah.
From the Democratic point of view, this is not what's best for the country, but they have to almost give it to her, because then if they had like the mini primaries thing, I just don't, I hear about this great bench, okay? And I hear all the names mentioned on it. Shapiro of Pennsylvania. Well, that could be a pretty bold pick. I mean, would he help deliver Pennsylvania state by the Democrats need? Yeah, he probably would. J.B.
Hmm.
Pritzker, he's a Democrat in deep blue Illinois. He's not going to add any value to the ticket.
But he's a billionaire. He comes with
He
a
is a
lot of
bit.
money.
He does have a lot of money. I've heard the name Andy Beshear thrown out. Andy Beshear is a successful two-term governor of arguably one of the reddest states in the country, and from everything I've seen, he's done a pretty damn good job. His name gets mentioned properly. So, Angie, of those names there, who's going to be Kamala Harris's vice president if that happens?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to wait for Donald Trump to make his pick, and based on that, they're going to find the counterpart. Look, I love that we're already talking post Biden, because Biden, in my view, is already out. It's just going through the motions of the script to get him out. I think Kamala Harris, if I had to make a bet, it's going to be a white male, right, to do that counterbalance, because that is what, there are centrists, and there are going to be people who don't want, they want the balance they have now, a Joe Biden, but a better version of Joe Biden, right? So it serves that manner. Of those names, I think whoever can whoever can make people calm down, because right now the Democrats are on fire, and what the biggest fear amongst the DNC is that if they lose on November 5th and they lose down ballot, they've lost the Democratic Party in multiple states for a few election cycles. And I'm not the one saying this. These are Democrat strategists saying this, and they're saying it very publicly because they're doing the math. They're doing the data science on this. They're not going to win back control of a lot of these seats, not for a while and not without a lot of money. Now, I think I actually, you got to have to throw in like almost like a Sarah Palin in this scenario. You got to throw in a complete wild ball, because you don't have time, and you got to strike that, fire in 2 seconds, and people have to get it without the campaigning and months of marketing and all that stuff. Because, you mentioned a lot of names. Like, I'm inside baseball, so are you. We know these guys, but the American voter, no, they're not going to know who these guys are. And then they're going to have to paint, a narrative for them and sell it to the American public. They don't have time. That's why, I laugh at myself, but I think it might be like a George Clooney. It's like, boom, you know who he is. He's America's sweetheart for the men and women, and he's likable, and you like him. So vote for him. That's almost like the momentum that needs to happen within the Democratic Party.
Let me throw one other name out out there, and this is not an endorsement, but what about Hillary Clinton?
Woo! Wouldn't she love that? She threw her own name out the other day, and I laughed. Look, how do I say this kindly? Because I'm female, clearly also minority. I will say that there are people, when they close that curtain to vote, there's still that hesitancy. And I hate that I'm saying it, especially in 2024, but I know there is, and I have science to back that as well. So it's sad, but I can't imagine them letting Hillary have another run, because she doesn't. It's not just the female thing. She just doesn't have it. She doesn't have the Bill Clinton it.
No.
And it's, she can't buy it either. She thinks she can buy it with press and money and harassment and all the other bullying tactics that she used. She just doesn't have it. And I think I think it's recognized. So, but I love it.
Let me ask you this question, Angie. We got like 3 minutes left. Both Joe Biden, his approval rating from pre-NATO summit until now this weekend, he's gone from 37 to 39%. So not a great number, but it's better than it was 4 or 5 days ago. Kamala Harris is still, her approval rating is a point or two below his. Are they really upgrading that much with her? And yeah, I think you're right on that white male thing. I wouldn't shock me in the least. But assumption in question. When do you think the Democrats, now you mentioned it earlier, you thought it would be maybe next Wednesday when they make the change. Are you sticking by those guns? Because I think Biden is going to be down in Texas doing some museum dedication.
Yeah, well, so we were all waiting for the NATO summit to be over because how embarrassing would it be if Joe Biden wasn't there in Washington to host the NATO summit? So now that that's over, the Democrats have come out to say today or on Friday that they're on a 48-hour game plan to get Joe Biden out. I think it's going to happen next week only because they're going to wait for Trump to announce his VP pick. And right when that media thunder happens, when Trump knows how to suck all the media air out of every room, they're going to steal that thunder and throw in, well, Joe Biden's gone, just to deflate his balloon. That's how I would play it as a political strategist. But, I don't know if they're smart enough to do it. I'm giving them free brownie points here. I'm going to send them a bill.
All right, Angie, 1 minute to go. Who's Trump's vice president going to be next week when he makes the announcement?
Oh, okay. So it's come out so Don Jr. is going to be making that announcement to invite the presumptive nominee up. Don Jr. has already put his support to J.D. Vance. Melania Trump has come out, funny enough, saying she supports Doug Burgum, and she's got a lot more pull with the president these days. So I think it's going to be of those two men. As much as I like Glenn Youngkin, maybe he's going to be Secretary of State or something within the cabinet. I hope they do give him some sort of seat. I think he's a great politician and just a great guy overall. But yes, Doug Burgum is, I don't even like him, but I think he's a safe pick. He's the new Mike Pence.
Very good. Well, whoever he picks, it's going to be big news next week. Angie, I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show. It's been my pleasure having you. It was great when we got together at Mar-a-Lago, and it's been even more fun doing the show with you today. Thank you for being my guest. And that's it for today, folks. We'll be back tomorrow on Sunday with all the late breaking news. Thanks for viewing today.